Welcome to Mid-Century Living, your weekly nostalgia podcast about the best of technology and culture from the mid-20th century.
Welcome to episode 19 of Mid-Century Living, the show where we talk all about the best of the mid-20th century and how to add vintage vibes to your modern life. We're your hosts, Jacky
and Gonzalo. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about fast food and fast food restaurants. But first, Jacky, how was your week?
My week was good. Mostly I'm in the planning stages for Valentine's Day shenanigans, because it's right around the corner. So I've been doing a lot of deep dives into my vintage cookbooks and other recipe ideas, trying to come up with like what to make for dinner, what to make for like meal prep that week, and just like, I like a theme. Valentine's Day as a holiday is not like super important to me or anything, but I like dressing to a theme. I like making themed food. Like, so this, like any holiday coming up is exciting to me. So I've been hard at work researching what kind of tacky Valentine's Day stuff I can do this year. So that's mostly what I've been doing. I think I've got some like menus planned. I even have some like tacky meal prep I can do for Valentine's week that no one will enjoy but me, but I'll still like have like cute little heart-shaped lunches. I'm excited. But anyway, that's what I've been doing.
I love that talking about meal prep, and this was not rehearsed because I'm going to use that later on. But I also love that you do themed meal preps because I meal prep the same exact food every day. Like literally, I haven't changed my menu since the summer. And listeners, we are in the northern western hemisphere, and we're recording in January. So the summer was 6 months ago. My students always make fun of me when they see me eat. They're like, here he comes again with the carne molida, which is ground beef.
You just eat a bowl of ground beef for breakfast? Oh, I don't know why I assumed that was breakfast that you were talking about.
No, that was just my second meal of the day. It's ground turkey with rice and peas and an avocado. And it's what I always eat at 10:15 because that's when lunch for teachers is. So,
which is basically brunch.
Yeah. I have a student who always sees me eat because I eat the same thing later on after school. And he always sees me. He's like, there he comes again with his carne molida and rice and ketchup because, yes, I put ketchup on it sometimes. But anyway.
Gross. I really don't like ketchup. Mostly I meal prep as one, so I can kind of keep my meals nutritionally balanced and cut down on sodium and save money, blah, blah, blah. But like also it's because I don't want to cook every day. So I do as much as I can on the weekends so that during the week I can coast.
See, mine, I meal prep for like fitness goals, but there is a very nice added benefit that I have to worry about cooking once a week. Mm-hmm. Rest of the week, all I do is go into my fridge and I pick out Tupperwares 1 through 3, put in my bag. They're not labeled. People don't get crazy. I'm not that insane. Yep. They're not labeled. I just know which ones are which. They all look the same too. But and unfortunately, they're not Tupperware like we discussed in our last episode. Anyway.
Well, that's cool. So what else is new with you this week?
Well, my week was, again, we're in the part of the school year where it's starting to get hard. And I don't mean for the students, I mean for the teachers, because I am also in grad school. So I also have homework. And this week was very stressful because hopefully none of my professors are listening. But we have classes on Mondays and Wednesdays. And so on Thursday, I was catching up with my Wednesday class, and I'm working furiously to get stuff done because I knew that I was going to be busy over the weekend and everything's due on Sunday. So I am working frantically, and at like 9 p.m., I realized part of my assignment required a signature from someone on my campus. And I had taken Friday off because I was going to be doing something for our sports team. So I frantically emailed my mentor on campus. I was like, I need the signature. I'm out tomorrow. Where are you in the morning before school starts? And thankfully he replied, he goes, yeah, I'm in this place and I'll be here until the bell rings, blah, blah, blah. So like I was rushing in the morning between getting to the school and like getting the kids ready for the bus and that kind of stuff so we could leave. And I'm rushing and I'm like, oh, I got to go print this now and I go get this signature and I'm running like crazy. So it was very stressful getting my homework done. And now I understand when my students are like, oh, you do too much. I don't do too much. It's just that apparently, like me, we all suck at time management. So that was my week.
Yeah, do I have too much on my plate, or is my time management the issue? Is a very I wonder. That's a debate that I think about a lot, actually. Like, do I have
Yeah.
too many hobbies? Or, but yeah, well, my stuff is just hobbies. I have one job and then I just come home and it's like, am I into cooking and cocktail making this week? Am I going to sew something? So it like comes in waves. I have a lot of things I like to do and I just kind of alternate them so that, because I can't
Hmm.
do it all at once. But
Yeah, don't
compartmentalizing them
try
relieves
because
me
I
from
can't
that.
do it all at once either. It's not
Yeah,
possible.
that sounds rough and unpleasant.
Hmm.
But do you know what's not rough and unpleasant, or perhaps what is rough and unpleasant, is the history of fast food?
Yeah, let's get on with the show. Jackie, as you mentioned earlier, you like to meal prep, and followers on Instagram will have seen your meal prep. Do you ever feel tired not wanting to cook?
Yes, always, and that's why I meal prep. But there are some days where I have been known to stop for something on my way home from work because I don't feel like cooking dinner that day.
Well, that is what many people would do and still do when faced with not having enough time or not having enough want to cook. There's a journalist by the name of Adam Chandler who wrote a book titled Drive Through Dreams, where he states that while there are no real rights in the USA, like rights like RITES, the closest we come to involves consuming, quote, sodium beneath the comforting fluorescence of anonymous fast food dining room or beneath the dome light of a car.
Whoa,
Everyone
how
does it.
deep?
I know.
Well, that gets to a very different aspect of fast food, which is like eating in the fast food restaurant. I honestly cannot remember the last time I sat and ate inside a fast food restaurant. To me, the appeal is
Hmm.
the drive through, and then you can go anywhere else. I have eaten in my car, though. Like, I have, like, gone through a drive through and then sat in my car, but I don't sit by myself alone in restaurants. But that's a whole other episode.
I do. I mean, I don't know. Last time I ate inside of a fast food restaurant, I know for sure we did in high school because there was nowhere
Mhm.
else to go except for the Whataburger.
Yes.
Should we maybe explain what a fast food restaurant is before we get too far in?
Yeah, sure. So, a fast food restaurant, also known as a quick service restaurant in the industry, is a specific type of restaurant that serves fast food cuisine and has minimal table service.
Yeah, and typically it's also a limited menu, usually cooked in bulk and kept hot. Although sometimes, and especially now, it's cooked to order, but often for takeaway. So when did fast food become such a hit? This episode deals mainly with fast food in the USA. And actually, it started well before what we think. So, the precursor to the fast food is called the automat, following along our list of really cool names.
Yes.
And the automat was basically a restaurant that was walls of coin operated cubbies that had hot food and beverages behind glass windows. So a person would go pick the cubby with the food that they want or the drink that they want, and you put your coins in the machine, and it would allow you to open the door, and you'd be able to pull out your food. And this provided quick and delicious meals with no waiters, which meant lower prices. Think vending machines, but unlike the vending machines of today, the automat was actually a room where the workers were behind the machines, rushing to keep up with demand, cooking, and then putting the new foods into the empty cubbies.
I think automats are super cool, by the way. This might be a good idea for a future episode if we can find more details about them. I never really thought
Yeah,
of them as a type of fast food, though, but I guess you're right. Yeah, that's what else would you call that?
yeah. By the 1950s, there were over 100 locations in New York City, which at the time made it the world's largest restaurant chain. Both what was appealing is that the customers didn't have to interact with a human. Rather than order from a waiter, diners inserted the coin into the machine, like I said, turned the chrome knob and porcelain or a porcelain knob, and received their full meal in moments. And people could eat perpendicular meals, meaning eat standing up at counters near or in the
They still
automat.
love to do that in New York. Everyone eats standing up there, and I hate it.
I never noticed, but I do remember that certain episode in like early Friends where they're eating pizza and they're all just standing and people are behind them going crazy, and I'm like, sit.
Yeah, eating and standing or eating and walking.
I can understand that because I try to eat and walk, but the problem is that I usually have a non-Tupperware with me and a fork.
Yeah,
And
that's
walking
hard to
through
do.
the crowded hallways at school with a fork is difficult because people will knock into you and then rice goes flying. Anyway, fast food restaurants run parallel to I want to say the invention of the car, but not really the invention, the popularity of the car. They're kind of intertwined industry. I mean, think of the fact that most people, like we said earlier, use drive-throughs for fast food. I mean, like we asked earlier, what was it last time that you sat inside a fast food restaurant to eat? The first fast food restaurant most people think of is McDonald's, but really it was White Castle, which was a burger shop and is a burger shop that opened in Wichita, Kansas in 1921. So well before our time period. And really what happened in 1921 were their first efforts to standardize the production of fast food, because they actually started in 1916 selling out of like walkable burger stands. And it's the first fast food supply chain to provide the meat, buns, paper goods, and other supplies to their restaurants. Have you ever been to White Castle?
I sure have. I'm from New York originally, and they have a ton of those there.
Yeah, they don't have White Castle down here where I live. So my only knowledge of White Castle is from the movie Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. So that's the kind of beginnings of the fast food chains. But it really wasn't until 1951, in our time period, that fast food became a thing, because that is when Merriam-Webster included the term for the first time in their dictionary.
Oh.
What food do you think is most associated with fast food?
I bet you it's got to be the hamburger.
Yeah, the hamburger. And the fast food that we most associate with it is McDonald's, which actually was created in 1940, and it started in San Bernardino, California, by brothers Richard and Maurice McDonald, which is actually their last name. And I had no idea before researching this. But they actually started a barbecue drive-in style restaurant. And the thing is that they noticed that the majority of their sales came from burgers. So in 1948, they closed their shop for about 3 months and reopened it as a walk-up stand, offering a simple menu: hamburgers, shakes, french fries, coffee, and Coca-Cola, all served in disposable paper wrapping. And what I mean by walk-up is that there was no sitting inside. There was no drive-through. You literally would walk up to the window, and get your food that way.
Huh.
Yeah, and it's actually a place like that, literally a mile away from my house. And I know it's a mile because I've walked it before. But they, instead of burgers, they sell frozen custard. I've never had a burger in one of those places, but I have eaten at Ritter's, which is the frozen custard near me. But what's really cool about McDonald's is that they developed what they called the Speedy Service System. And this was the name for their streamlined production method, which is what became the standard for fast food production. So this was a production of burgers and fries that was constant, without waiting for the customer's orders, meaning that they could be served immediately, which helped them lower the price of their menu. So burgers were 15 cents a piece, which was at the time about half the price of what you could pay for a burger at a typical diner. So by 1954, their stand was doing so well that the McDonald's brothers were the number one purchaser of milkshake blending machines from the manufacturer Prince Castle, which is funny also because there's that joke right now that their ice cream machines are always broken.
Yeah.
But they bought so many milkshake blending machines that surprised and confused one of the Prince Castle salesmen by the name Ray Kroc. Went to California to the stand to see why they had ordered almost a dozen units instead of the traditional one that most restaurants ordered. And when he got there, amazed by the success of this concept in this restaurant, what he did was sign a franchise agreement with the McDonald's and began to open McDonald's restaurants in Illinois. And by 1961, he had bought out the brothers and created the McDonald's Corporation.
Wow.
Yeah. And McDonald's had a couple more firsts. They, under Kroc's leadership, created more standards like commitment to cleanliness, meaning keep the restaurant clean, which you would think is common sense, but spending time to do it is really the concept here. And then also some sort of glass covered or opening that allowed the customers to look at the production of food. So as you are ordering your food, you are seeing the food being made, even if it's not the one you will be eating, because they kind of cook in bulk.
Mm.
So we mentioned earlier that cars and fast food are connected, and McDonald's was originally a walk-up style restaurant, even after Kroc took over. But we start seeing the introduction of drive-throughs into this concept. In 1948, in Baldwin Park, California, a restaurant opened that offered exactly what its name said: to be in and out with no delay, as takeout meals for motorists. And if you've guessed In and Out Burgers, then that you are correct. But what they had was an intercom ordering system where you would order via intercom, and there was neither inside seating or outside parking, which meant that the
Oh,
only way to get your food was to literally drive through the restaurant.
no outside parking is interesting, but I guess yeah, that would keep it moving really fast.
Yeah, and I don't know how that's even possible. I guess in the 40s it was different, but like right now, like every time you build a building, you have to by code have X number of parking spots. But anyway, so the introduction of drive-throughs started to be more common, but it didn't really take place on a whole as up until the 1960s or early 1970s. And it changed the food that was offered because the focus was then shifted to hamburgers and fries, and then spurred the creation of things like drip-free tacos and fried chicken morsels, as the article that I was reading had. And what they meant to describe was like nuggets and like boneless wings and that kind of stuff. And I feel like they should have said that because morsels does not sound appetizing to me.
Fried chicken morsels is what I'm going to
Yeah.
call nuggets from now on.
But the connection with the car is even stronger because not only did the car help the fast food restaurants grow, but also the fast food restaurants helped the cars develop because back until before the 60s and 70s, and even maybe into the 80s, cup holders were not commonplace in cars. But as we have more restaurants offering drive-throughs, you're purchasing your meal, and when we had the creation of the value meal, where we started to connect food with sides and a drink, cars started to have cup holders. So,
Cool. That's really interesting.
yeah, yeah. I never thought about it. I just assumed that cars always had cup holders, but it makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
drive-throughs, were, I guess back in the day, you could take like your whiskey with you as you were driving.
Yeah, and Mad Men Don does that a lot, but he takes his like actual glass from the house,
Oh,
like
like the crystal glass.
open top. Yeah, just like an actual fancy glass, and just will is driving, but he has to hold it the whole time because you're right, there aren't any cup holders. And also
Yeah,
back then they didn't even have like that middle console in the front between seats.
yeah,
Uh, like it was just a big bench that you could slide back and forth on. So, uh, yeah, you just have to hold your drink.
yeah, yeah. A bench seat. You described the bench seat.
Oh, thanks. Oh, so it is called a bench. All right, great. Look,
Yeah.
I know car stuff.
So the mid-century was the beginning of many of these restaurants. Like we mentioned earlier, White Castle started before our time, as did some other um, well-known today restaurants. For example, Krispy Kreme started in 1937.
Yum.
McDonald's, even though we said started in 1948, their franchises by Kroc started in 1953. And in the 50s, we also had Dunkin' Donuts, which
Yay.
started in 1950, franchises in 1955. Jack in the Box, also 1950. Kentucky Fried Chicken, which that was the name before. I know now we know it as KFC, but Kentucky Fried Chicken started in 1952. Uh, Burger King started in 1954 under the title Insta Burger King as a competition for McDonald's down in Florida. Arby's in 1964. Uh, Dominic's Pizza Store in 1961, which was later renamed Domino's.
Cool.
And then Subway and Wendy's in the 60s. And I know that 70s are technically outside of our group, but Starbucks, which you may not think of as a fast food restaurant, but it is.
It does have a drive-through.
So those are some of the restaurants, or the fast food restaurants, I should say, from the mid-century. Uh, but another change that fast food restaurants are known for in the mid-century is in the 1960s, because fast food restaurants started to include stuff in their menus specific to children, and advertisers began to focus marketing efforts at children, which is something that restaurants did not really do. And at this time also, we're talking about when America starts focus on centering on the family experience. So family oriented culture means spending time with the family, and fast food restaurant excursions were fun and affordable and offered items for all ages. And this also coincided with popular notions like less work for mother.
Yeah, because that it seems like this would just be a natural thing to throw under the umbrella of like making it easier. Like, buy this blender; it'll make cooking a breeze. Come to
Yeah.
our fast food restaurant and get dinner on the table in seconds. Like, I feel like that's all under the same like marketing umbrella.
Yeah, and you can see the appeal as families as a whole are starting to get more and more busy. Fast food restaurants offered a nice little breather uh, for when days got really busy.
Still useful today, which I guess
Yep.
transitions us into our connection to today's segment.
That is true. So, like Jackie said, fast food is still a huge part of everyone's life, or not everyone's, but a lot of people's lives today. I mean, you go out on the street and the first thing you see is a fast food place. They're kind of all over the place. And I wanted to run through a quick stat before we talk about their impact today, because let's face it, money is a huge impact, and this is about money. So, the revenue created by fast food restaurants in today, at the time of recording in 2024, um, the top sellers are McDonald's, Burger King, Starbucks, and Subway, with over 10 billion US dollars per year. The top 10 restaurants make almost 120 billion. Actually, it's 119.5 if you want to get specific, in US based sales, with McDonald's the top.
Wow. Amazement.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money. And also, my other main takeaway is I cannot believe Subway's in the top. I'm like
I know.
shocked every day how many Subway sandwich restaurants there are, and they are the worst sandwich place. They are
Well,
the
also,
least. Well, they're actually. Let me. So they. Now we know that they started in 1965, and they've been around a really long time, and they probably made that like conveyor belt style where they make your sandwich right in front of you with eye contact. I'm sure, like a deli counter, but faster. Like, and that makes them significant and interesting. But there are so much more delicious sandwiches now, besides their sandwiches.
well, I mean, seeing your food being done does go back to the mid-century and Kroc and his openings at McDonald's. So look at that. So that's
Perfect.
how much money they make in the U.S. sales alone. So the question really is, well, how else do they impact the world today? Well, in the U.S. alone, they employ more than 4 million workers. And this also impacts the world globally, because US based fast food restaurants are some of the largest and most successful, and boast franchises in more than 100 countries. I mean, fast food's everywhere, like we said earlier. It's a huge part of not only our diets, but our cultures. You can find them on the street, in airports, train stations, sports arenas, gas stations, pretty much everywhere people will be, fast food restaurants will be. So yeah, not only do the owners make money in fast food restaurants, but the majority of them are owned by franchisees or franchises, or people who own franchises, I should say. So we're not a technical podcast, and that extends to economics. So real quickly, a franchise is just a private party that is allowed to use a parent company's name and trademark and all that stuff in exchange for an agreed fee, and sometimes also a percentage of sales per annum.
I don't know when the best time to throw this anecdote in, but I was actually just listening to a podcast recently where they were talking about working at a Burger King or a McDonald's, I'm not sure. I think it was Burger King in the 80s when they changed from. So it used to be that the standard was that they always had like 5 of every sandwich made at all times. And so the kitchen staff in the back was just making sure there were always 5 sandwiches like ready for the cashier to grab to like throw into bags. And then all of a sudden they switched to making everything to order. And apparently it was a really big deal because customers who had been coming to that store forever and were used to getting their food instantly now had to wait a minute and a half for their sandwich to be made fresh to order. And it was a really, really big deal at the time. But it's making it if you're making every sandwich to order, it's way easier for people with like dietary restrictions or allergies or who don't want, because like before when they just had 5 of every standard sandwich made at all times, if you wanted something without pickles or without onions, they had to make that one special and that held up the entire order, whereas now everyone's made to order, so it's a lot easier to get customizations and without slowing down the whole process. Because that is the process now. So apparently that was in the 80s at least, that was when that happened. So,
well, and then that
fact.
also connects with health concerns that fast food restaurants have now. It's still something that's active today. With you mentioned making things on demand instead of having them already done helps people that have dietary restrictions, which is one of the things that restaurants or fast food restaurants, I should say, it's kind of hard to cook for everyone. That's different because they're making everything at once in bulk. So yeah, and apart from all that, fast food restaurants also have some other health concerns. There's been issues with some fast food restaurants, health issues. It's no secret that in order to make lots of food fast and cheap, you can't always focus on too much on the ingredients or how things are made, like you can in a traditional restaurant. And this led to a lot of quote easier made foods that are fried or cooked in oil, which then led to some health concerns, especially as we moved into the 21st century and society started to be a little bit more health centered. Fast food restaurants and fast food itself is commonly blamed today for the obesity epidemic, which claims that 60% of all Americans are either overweight or obese. And they take the majority of the blame specifically for children and teenagers, because 34% of the children and teens consume fast food on any given day, and this number is growing. And I kind of think it's a bit of a scapegoat. I don't think we can blame fast food for all the weight-related health issues. I think there's a lot of different things, and everyone is different as to their reason why they may be not within the quote healthy weight ranges. But apart from weight being an issue, the FDA has stated that the amount of cholesterol in blood raises the chance of developing heart disease, which is one of the lead causes of death in the US. And trans fat raises the amount of cholesterol. And many fast food restaurants have higher than normal or higher than other foods amounts of trans fat. So there is a connection to be made with the amount of trans fat and possible developing of heart disease. And one last note about health stuff. Studies have been carried out to see how many restaurants use antibiotics in their meals as well. And really the importance here is that if we consume a lot of antibiotics, then we can develop resistance to them. And antibiotic resistant infections affect millions of Americans each year. So if you have a higher tolerance for antibiotics, you will not be able to fight off an infection when needed.
When they say antibiotics in their meals, do they mean antibiotics in their meat?
The study that I read was not specific as to where it came from. It was more generic. It's actually a footnote in a study.
Because it makes sense that it's recent, I think, where people are trying to buy meat that wasn't treated with antibiotics.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense that that would be something that fast food restaurants had to roll out now to keep up with that new health development.
Yeah. So yeah. That's all to say that today there are many fast food restaurants that are on their way to becoming healthier with healthier foods and healthier menus. And there's also restaurants that are centered around their healthy foods. So we see a change coming in how fast food restaurants foods emerge. But anyway, now that we're caught up to the present, it's time for our etiquette segment. So Jackie, what do we have today?
So today I've grabbed more tips from the Social Pleasantries chapter of Amy Vanderbilt's Complete Book of Etiquette, which is the same chapter I pulled something from 2 episodes ago when I was in charge of etiquette then as well. Because I think that the social pleasantries, I think, are like particularly different from today and funny to read. And she has a pretty sassy section on personal questions. So I left most of this in her words because I think that it's hilarious. So here are some highlights. Personal questions. What are they? Quote, sometimes I feel that understanding of what constitutes a personal question is innate rather than acquired. There are people who seem to have been born tactful, and others who, no matter what they are told and how often they offend, consciously or unconsciously, continue their stream of personal questions to the discomfort of all of those with whom they come in contact. Burn. Like, this lady, I don't know, I just think she's hysterical.
Boom, roasted.
So, what are the personal questions? We should not, for example, ask the cost of everything. If your neighbor wishes to volunteer certain information, the amount he paid for his house, or the cost of his son's school tuition, or how much he paid for his new lawnmower, that is his privilege. But we should not ask these intimate questions unless there's some very valid reason for doing so. Unless you have some business reason to do so, you shouldn't ask a man or woman the amount of insurance he or she carries, the amount of their mortgage or rent, the salaries of their servants, which I thought was an interesting line to put in 1957, because I wasn't aware that many people still had servants in 1957, but maybe they mean, like, maybe the modern equivalent would be, like, the guy who does your lawn.
Yeah, or your
housekeeper. You know, if you have
maid service.
Yeah, like, people who come in a couple times a week. I don't know that many people who have, like, live-in servants anymore, but I'm sure lots of people do have people working for them, so maybe that's what they mean. Anyway, you might ask a man's age, though many men are less anxious to divulge that information as they pass 40. But you never ask that of a woman over 21, except for official reasons. Even then, the courtesy of letting her say over 21 usually is accorded a woman.
Okay.
Though many women are frank about their ages, sometimes aggressively so, it really is no one's business, and it is, I think, a permissible conceit for anyone to shave off a few years if her face doesn't belie the amputation. So she's basically giving you permission to lie about your age in public if you look younger than you are.
Yeah,
so.
you can make a cut to your age, right?
Right.
Cut to the number if your face doesn't belie it.
I think she's just like the sassiest thing. I cannot believe. Anyway, most women are equally sensitive about their weight and dislike being asked to name the figure, with which they are doubtless displeased.
I think that should go for men as well.
Yeah, that probably should. Men and women of less than average height are often diffident about references to the fact. And while practically all American girls, and men too, have big feet these days, many like to pretend their feet are smaller than they actually are, in deference perhaps to the Victorian idea that small hands and feet denoted gentility.
Interesting.
So most of that is just a list of things that are rude to ask, but I guess what is an actual etiquette tip about it is how to deal with direct questions. So personal questions can be unsettling unless you develop enough sophistication to cope with them gracefully. Sometimes they are brutally asked with intent to wound. A naturally witty person knows well enough how to reply. An author who was asked by a jealous contemporary, "Who wrote your book for you?" replied, "Who read it to you?" This question for question defense should be best left to the professionals. A safer way is to pretend that no offense was meant. Often the poser of personal questions is just a blunderer who doesn't really mean to be malicious. For example, if you're a woman who does not care to advertise her age, you might reply to someone who asks how old you are when it's none of his business. "You know, the women in my family have always been ageless, and I'd like to keep it that way."
Oh, that's kind of cool. Classy way of answering that.
If you can't think of a tactful answer, and the personal probing still goes on, the only solution is to be quite frank. Say, without getting angry, "I know you don't realize it, but that is a personal question, and I don't feel willing to answer." If he then takes offense, he deserves to. Mic drop.
You know what? I like that. I like that. Yeah, like I don't want to answer. Like you're well within your right to say I don't want to answer this question, and then if the person gets offended, then like Amy says, they deserve it.
Yep.
So I guess that kind of gives my opinion of the etiquette because I'm for.
Yeah, I actually think that most of this bit of etiquette, what are personal questions, everyone acknowledges that these are indeed personal questions that shouldn't be asked. People just do it anyway now. They tend to just be like, they're aware that they're asking a personal question, and they'll either say, like, "Can I ask you a personal question?" or say, "I know you're not supposed to talk about this, but blah, 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 blah. Like, everyone knows that you're not supposed to do these things, but at a party, they'll still ask you personal questions like that. So, I don't know. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I think it's just got more to do with, now in the internet, you are anonymous, or to an extent. So people tend to ask questions that are more personal or maybe not socially acceptable. And then we started to blend and this might be a deeper thought for another conversation, but we kind of started to blend online and real life as soon as we got into social media.
Yeah.
So I think it's like people are like, oh, well, I say this online, so I can say it in person. When in reality, yeah, these questions or this type of conversations, if it's personal, you shouldn't have to answer it. So don't ask it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Stamp or no stamp?
Uh, I say stamp. I think that some of these questions, they're impolite, and I think she's exactly right that some people are just rude,
Mm-hmm.
and you can try to put them off as, like, daintily as possible, but sometimes you just have to be rude back, and just don't get mad. Just be like, that is a personal question, and I do not want to answer it, and you are under no
Yeah.
social obligation to answer it just because someone asked it to you.
Yeah.
And probably more emphasis, and I agree with you, the internet has ruined a lot of social niceties, but I think we should probably go back to not demanding answers of everyone for super personal things.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, close friends aside, like, she even said she wouldn't ask her best friend whether she had dyed her hair. So maybe that's a little extreme, but I think, like, I think that, like, some things are just rude, and they're rude if you ask them on the internet, and they're rude if you ask them in person too. So anyway, I approve
Yep.
of all of this.
Yep. Yep. So anyway, it looks like with all this, we have landed the plane. So thank you guys all for listening today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show and tell a friend.
You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. This is the best place to send us feedback and episode suggestions. Send us a DM anytime.
So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to Mid-Century Living. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at MCL Podcast. See you next Friday.